G's off a homegrown good, cause call me post haste, no more prolong. G's, I'm tryna get paid at the utmost. See it up close, don't freeze. I'm at the more G's, tryna get paid. You know it's all still
Absolutely. So SMB and NFL, huh?
That's right, man.
Oh man, you're gonna have to tell me about that.
I'd love to.
All right, well let's sit down and let's have a little chat. It's been a while. Let me get caught up with you.
We live in the same town. How come I only see you when you're on the internet?
Because you only ask for me when you ask for money.
And now we got to switch sides.
Love it. All right. So Sam, obviously you are the SMB guy, and for people who don't know what SMB is, that's small to medium-sized business. I've dubbed you the SMB guy. That's me saying.
You're going to offend a lot of people by saying
I'm going to probably offend a lot of people, but you're really the first person I know who really embraced the space and kind of made it a real career for yourself. And obviously you opened Pursuant Capital, which is essentially a business that buys businesses.
Right.
So let me ask you this. You were obviously a very successful person in your career already. You have a law degree. You're also a CPA. You could have easily stayed in corporate America.
Lots of papers.
Lots of papers. What made you decide to go out and buy a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think most people who think about being entrepreneurs get that itch. I didn't know what that meant when I got it. This was 10 years ago. And for a while, I was wondering why I wasn't great at my job. I was wondering why I didn't enjoy it. And I think that was my version of getting the entrepreneur's itch. And so, I thought long and hard about how I could be on the other side of the table, the business owner. And it was tough to imagine how to do that other than leaving my fancy, steady law job and going and buying a company. And I did that really to get the independence, sort of that control over your time, the ability to generate a legacy for yourself and some wealth. And so it was a bit of a leap of faith, but I guess in hindsight it worked out.
Did your family support that initially? Did they think you were crazy? What was the initial feedback?
Yeah, I'm sure they did think we were crazy. I mean, at the end of the day, leaving a law firm job that you worked 10 years to get to go buy a company, a small business, seems crazy. I think it probably is to a certain extent, which is why it requires the right mindset to go do it. But they were supportive, thankfully.
Well, people, in general, they love stability, right? So I think that...
Says the banker.
Says the banker who's also an entrepreneur, though, right? So
Touche.
I do own 2 businesses outside of the bank.
Touche.
But I also haven't left the bank yet, so I guess
that's a good mix.
Yeah. So it's a good mix for me, and so I guess I've kind of found my own happy medium. But
yeah.
You really burnt your boats and you went all in. I mean, do you think that that's kind of been the key to your success?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's my personal approach is black or white. And I'm not sure I could have taken the half in, half out approach that maybe you've taken. That's a strength, by the way. You still have steady income while you take some risk. I killed the steady income to go take risk. And in hindsight, that might have been crazy. But, I guess it works out. Again, I think it really depends. The approach you take is on your personality. Mm-hmm. I had some stability too. My wife at the time was working, and that helped a ton. We only had 1 kid at the time. That helped a ton. I've got 3 now. There's no chance I could do it.
No, that makes perfect sense. So you mentioned the word mindset. Talk to me about mindset for a little bit. Do you believe it takes a special mindset to be able to operate a small to medium-sized business?
I mean, I think it starts and ends with mindset. Small business ownership, small business operations is so tough in a way that when you work a white-collar job, I don't think I understood. It's the people management, it's the fact that all the risk is on you, it's when customers leave, that is money out of your pocket. It's all about mindset. And that's why I think that actually buying a small business probably isn't for everybody. You have to crave that independence, that ability to generate wealth, more than all the other stuff, because it's going to be at times very stressful, and it's going to require a certain amount of hustle and grittiness that, frankly, I wasn't taught in professional services, and I don't think you can get it there.
So did you feel like you had to learn that on the fly, essentially? Like you just kind of made that dive, like I said, you burnt your boats, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I better figure this out because I have no other option.
Yeah, I mean, for many of us, I think becoming an entrepreneur was not a decision that I had an option over. I mean, I was burned out, and I think we all get burned out at times, but it was just the natural next step was to go do it for myself. But that was 10 years ago. I was a lot younger. I didn't have a lot to lose, and
Sure.
These days, I think it would be a different question.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think what people need to understand is that making that dive from being part of a structured organization to essentially running a small business is you have to be comfortable without having true structure. Because when you're just a cog in the machine, it feels very safe. It's like, hey, here's my widget. I build it every day. As long as I continue to build this widget,
Yeah.
I'm going to have a job. My family's going to eat. Everything's going to be okay. When you leave that behind and go into, hey, I'm running this small business, all of a sudden, there is no more widgets that need to be. It's everybody's widget, and it's everybody's personality,
Right.
and it's, looking at it from the top down or from the bottom up, depending on how you want to view it.
Sure.
And then trying to figure out how to make everybody work in unison to be able to accomplish a larger goal, which, I mean, it's just not for everybody.
No, it's not. But at the same time, it's a way to create your destiny. It's a way to create and bring about a vision that you have in a small company. And it doesn't really matter what kind of business it is. I actually think less than I used to that industry matters. I don't think it really needs to. It probably needs to rhyme with your background, or eventually you're going to get into the weeds of your small business. And so, if you had a white collar upbringing and you're going to go buy a Techs and Trucks business, you better sort of be prepared for the type of personalities that exist in that industry. But otherwise, it's an adventure. So anybody that's buying a small business, anybody can do it. Obviously, the SBA is there to provide for that.
Sure.
But it is very gritty.
That is something you touched on there about going into certain types of industries, because it's something that we see sometimes where it's like, hey, we have this guy, he's a super smart guy, maybe he has a Wharton MBA behind him, he's 25 years old, and he wants to go buy this business that's electricians
Yeah.
who've been doing this for the past 20 years, right? But he thinks he's going to come in there and know how to do it better than they've done it for the last 20 years. I mean,
Right.
How do you navigate that type of situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to navigate that situation. I think a certain amount of that is when you're 25 and you're just out of a fancy Ivy League degreed school, that unbridled confidence is a pro and a con. I mean, at a certain point, you do need to have some crazy confidence to go do this. I can't tell you that I see that as a great fit. You see a lot of these Ivy League folks trying to go buy Techs and Trucks businesses. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily agree with it, although I guess I'm involved in a few of those opportunities and businesses. So at a certain point, a lot of the business functions that are in every small business, they rhyme and repeat. And for the folks that have the skill to oversee that, good for them. It's not necessarily what I do. But I also don't run small businesses anymore. I'm not a day-to-day operator or a day-to-day leader anymore. And I'm not sure I was all that good at it. I'm probably better off in this seat.
Sure. So how involved are you now on a day-to-day basis with the operation of the businesses?
Yeah, I think it depends on the business. Generally speaking, no small company that I'm involved with relies on me for any day-to-day operational anything.
Sure.
And that was kind of by design. I frankly didn't enjoy being the president or day-to-day manager of any of the businesses that I've had to run in the past, and there's 3 of them. There are people that are more skilled and more apt to do that. So I think of myself as kind of director of special projects and firefighter.
So do you view Pursuant Capital more as like a capital allocation company now?
No. I mean, capital allocation is something you read about on Twitter, but at the end of the day, this
That's
is
not real? Is that like the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy?
Exactly. No,
Okay.
I mean, capital allocation is a fun game to play when businesses get big and
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that can do a lot of the day-to-day things like firefighting. Mm-hmm. But no, it's not capital allocation. It's really about managing from afar complicated, hairy, small companies.
So, what industries do you currently own businesses in?
So when we started this nearly a decade ago, we got involved in roll-off dumpster rentals, a manufacturer of a building product. Those were two local businesses. And but since then, and I think about that as the start because I was in those businesses running them day to day. Like that was entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
That's where I got my battle scars.
Right.
And since then, since selling those two businesses, I've been fortunate, but it was by intent to step back and try to be more of an owner and not necessarily the day-to-day operator, which is a distinction I talked about 5 years ago, but didn't know what the hell that actually was.
Right.
But now I'm in different businesses like cargo trailer manufacturing, multifamily lighting, commercial fencing, HVAC, and investments in a lot of other things that are related. Blue collar, primarily, all around the country.
So, talking about industries, are there any industries that you would absolutely steer clear of in 2024?
If I knew what the future was going to hold, absolutely. I've probably been a little bit too conservative on that front. Probably.
But what don't you like? Which industries do you typically say, not for me?
Yeah, look, so I'm not a huge fan of B2C. I think selling to consumers is tough, so not a huge fan of retail, not a huge fan of e-com. You know, there's a lot of things out there that are glamorous or were before rates were rising that frankly I just wouldn't get involved in right now. So definitely not retail, definitely not e-com. I'm fairly convicted in construction, so I'm in a fair bit of construction business. But yeah.
So no Amazon FBA businesses at 10 times multiple anytime
That's
soon?
kind of what I was getting at. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, those can be really tough. You
Yep.
know, there were some banks that financed a lot of those, 3-4 years ago,
Yep.
and unfortunately, a lot
Whoops.
of them didn't quite pan out the way they were expecting it to. So
Exactly.
that's definitely an industry that even we as lenders, we prefer not to do the e-commerce. And obviously, there's the obvious ones like the restaurants and hospitality, things of that nature, gyms.
Right.
I know we try and stay away from that stuff as well, which, all that stuff is retail,
Right.
as you mentioned.
Right, and it's also a huge part of the volume of SBA deals is in those, I don't know, they're like micro SBA loans, right?
Sure.
And another thing too is like if you can get them for the right price, that's a big part of it, is getting a small business at the right price, which has not been easy to do the last 3 or 4 or 5 years.
So let's talk about that because are there still really good deals in the market? Are there still good SMB deals out there to be had, pricing wise?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I hear this all the time. I think I hear this twice a year where everybody's saying, SMB is mainstream now and everything is picked over. And the reason I disagree, and let's also assume I actually don't typically find opportunities directly from sellers. It's almost always through brokers. So by definition, those are marketed deals, and you would think they're more expensive.
Right.
But the longer I do this, I realize that if you're the right buyer for that business, you have a great story as to why you should buy that business, you can typically get opportunities that others don't. Whether it's pocket listings from brokers or lightly marketed deals, there are so many opportunities that you can buy for sub-market price, whatever that means.
And so I think it also shows that you've done a good job building relationships with the right brokers over time.
Yeah.
Because a really good business broker knows how to price a business.
Right.
And they price it to where it makes sense for the seller, obviously, but it also makes sense for a buyer as well. Right?
Yeah.
They're not going to overprice it because then they're not going to get any bites.
Right, and so brokers are generally pretty good at pricing deals when there's a listing price. The mindset shift, back to mindset, that needs to change for folks going out there and starting to search for the first time is, you might be getting into this to be an owner or an operator, but a lot of us don't necessarily like to be a salesperson. When you're in the search to buy a business game, you are a salesperson. You're selling yourself as the legacy holder for that small business. And you've got to turn over a lot of rocks. And I probably see a lot of wannabe entrepreneurs thinking they can just click a lot of buttons, send a lot of emails, and that's how they'll get their lead flow, and that's just not the case. You've got to hustle for it.
So talk about that a little bit. I mean, do you feel like that's what differentiates you guys in terms of, because I know some of these businesses that you guys have bought, they've been competitive.
Yep.
I mean, there's been 3, 4, maybe more people who are interested in buying that business, but you guys tend to come out on top more times than not. Is that because you actually pick up the phone and call people? Do you meet them in person? What's your
It's
secret?
because all of it, right? Like, what's the secret to entrepreneurship? I don't know. We're still figuring it out. But I think part of it is, we lose a ton of deals too.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
We don't talk about those though.
Of course not. This is the internet.
You didn't want those anyways.
Easy. You're right. I never want to win the overpaid deals.
For sure.
Look, at the end of the day, we do lose a lot of opportunities. A lot of times because either we're not the right fit, but mostly because we're disciplined in pricing. And there's always somebody that's going to come over the top. We look at a lot of stuff. So we look at a lot of deals. You've got to turn over a ton of rocks. And then I think at the end of the day, too, I've probably gotten, if there's a learning out there about being a searcher or a repeat business buyer, it's, the deals that you want to win really badly, do whatever it takes. You've got to get in front of the broker, you've got to get in front of the seller, you've got to have a real, genuine reason why you should be the owner of that company. And you can't be telling it to 40 brokers because it's not the case for every deal that you should be the right buyer.
Right. Right, that makes sense. So if you see something that you really like and like, hey, this is a really good deal.
Chase it hard.
Do everything not to
Yeah.
lose it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that makes perfect sense. So let me ask you this. How many businesses did you look at before you bought your first business?
Oh, it's been a while. I would say, I can tell you
Ballpark.
this for sure. We were under LOI twice
Right.
before we bought our first business. And those broke apart
Were you looking
for,
at financing one of those?
yeah, I think you were.
I believe I was. Yeah, I believe I was. I think it was a courier business or something along those lines.
That's
but-
exactly right.
Yeah.
About 2 blocks from here.
Yep.
God, that one still hurts. You got that one? Because that one still hurts.
It's funny. They're customers of us now.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly jealous. Yeah, so we were under LOI on 2 businesses. I know we submitted probably another half a dozen LOIs. So when you think about the number of deals you have to see to submit LOIs on 6 or 8 companies, to go under LOI on 2 of them that fall apart, in order to get to 1 that you actually close, I mean, this is your game too. It's a sales funnel.
Right.
And it's intense. I think most people think that they're going to go click on Biz Buy Sell, make a couple dozen phone calls, and then find the business they're going to end up buying. And they might. It just
Right.
might not be the right business to buy.
So obviously you built up a really good portfolio now of operating businesses, but what is your ultimate plan? Do you bundle these all up and sell them to private equity? Do you sell them off into individual investors, or what is the ultimate goal for you?
I thought you were about to say the dirty word,
What's that?
holdco.
Holdco. I mean,
Everybody, the portfolio, what are your portcos? It feels like it's a bunch of children that are running around throwing food at you all day long. God, that's terrible. I can't believe I said that. It's funny because when I started this, I had read a bunch of, books on how to do this that talked about how you should, once you buy something, own it forever and be the permanent home of a small company. And I thought that was a great idea. I'd buy one business and own it forever. And I think the first one we owned for a year. So, I guess this is the Mike Tyson thing, right? Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. So I think at the end of the day, right, we're trying to buy small companies to grow them. That is fundamentally, the idea. And if you can buy a small company at a fair price that is, sub $1 million of earnings, then you can. Doesn't matter how long it takes you to do this, but you can grow, up to $2 or $3 or $4 million a year of earnings. I say that like it's easy. It's incredibly hard. It takes a long time. But if you can do that, the price you pay on a multiple basis will grow and grow and grow, and you can have a transformative economic event for your family if you do that. So I think that's the game we're in, is to try and buy them smaller, grow them, and sell them to bigger buyers.
so it's maybe buy on a little bit on the small side,
Yeah.
grow to the medium size,
Yeah.
and that's usually when you would then exit and let somebody take it from medium to large.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, too, like we're talking about this in the context of an SBA loan.
Sure.
And so the businesses we're talking about are businesses doing, I've seen deals get done that are $10 million of purchase price with an SBA loan, but that's big. So we're talking about a lot of businesses that get bought for $2 or $3 or $5 or $6 million.
Sure.
And so if you're buying it at that price, maybe you're buying a business with, again, $500,000 or $1 million a year of EBITDA or profit. And if you can double or triple those annual earnings, somebody's going to pay you and reward you for that.
Sure. So, since you brought up the topic of SBA, how many SBA loans have you gotten now?
Is this where I say cut?
If you're not comfortable answering that, you don't have to go down that road.
I'll answer it this way. I am not the personal guarantor on any SBA loans right now.
Got it. Okay.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've done that. And
Yeah.
to be clear, that's actually what I suggest that most first-time small business buyers do,
Yeah.
because
Need that pressure.
that pressure, but also too, like, here we go. You ready for a commercial?
Yeah.
10-year fixed floating rate, 10-year covenant-free biz act debt.
Yeah.
90% LTV. Like, where else are you going to find that?
Nowhere
Thank you,
else.
America.
Yeah. And on top of that, now you can get creative with the equity injection too. So, now seller note held on standby for 2 years can actually make up a full equity injection, which did not exist a year ago.
I
It's,
know. And now these junior pari passu notes, it's a full game.
It's crazy times that we're living in here, but
Yeah.
hey, I'm here for it as an SBA lender. Don't get that mistaken. What made you decide to work with me as an SBA lender?
Because you played in the NFL.
That's a funny story because I was telling Sam about how this lady on the plane the other day mistook me for being an NFL player. And I, should have played into it more than I did, but I actually told her the truth that I'm a banker, which is not nearly as sexy as being an NFL player.
A banker and honest.
Yeah.
What a rare
look,
combo.
And maybe that's why you worked with me.
No, so what happened was when I left my law firm job to go try and buy a small business, I didn't know anybody in the community of SBA deals.
Sure.
I was only used to working on transactions that were private equity size. And so my brother and I asked for some meetings. And I don't know if you remember, but
Yeah.
we met at the old USAB. I don't know if I was allowed
Terry.
to say that dirty word here on
It's not
your
a dirty
video.
word. On the record.
And it was literally right down the street, that USAB branch right
Yeah,
there
yeah.
by Chipotle on West Shore.
Uh-huh.
And I literally was just trying to figure out, okay, I want to go buy a small business, but I don't have $5 million.
Right.
Where the heck am I going to get that from?
Yeah.
It was a long time ago now.
No, I remember Terry put that meeting together, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that was very early on in my SBA lending career. That was probably 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
And I became a lender in 2016. So that was like I was green.
So was I. You didn't know what you were selling, and I didn't know what I was buying.
We both faked in that meeting, but you know what? Here we are.
Maybe that's part of the lesson is at a certain point, if you're going to get into entrepreneurship, you got to fake it just enough.
Yeah. It was all sales, like you said, right?
Yeah.
You were in there selling yourself. I was
I
in there
figured
selling
you knew
myself.
exactly what you were doing at the
Oh,
time.
no, I had no clue. I barely knew what SBA stood for.
How long is the amortization period? 7 years?
I had a note sheet. Probably I was checking while I was reading it off to you confidently, But
Exactly.
But we got through it.
Yes, we did. Here we are.
Yeah,
Almost
here
10
we
years
are.
later.
Yeah, it is crazy actually, because now I'm a top producing SBA lender. You've built out obviously an incredible business for yourself. I mean, it really does come to fruition.
man. It's been fun.
Yeah, because you got to start somewhere. So
You still have the same amount of hair.
because I don't own businesses. Well, actually, I do own two, but I still have a day job, so I know my paycheck's coming.
Exactly.
You know?
So clearly, it's impacted me far more than you. However, getting into this game the way you've done it, pretty interesting. Can I turn the mic on you the
Sure.
next episode of this?
Yeah.
And ask the version of how do you buy a passive income business while you keep your W-2 job?
Really quickly, I'll just say there's no such thing as passive. They sold me on that dream.
Hence the quotes.
And here I am, on the call with my, my maid business at 8:30 a.m., in the morning, and that's just how we do it.
That's
you know?
right.
Because that's what you have to do. Because if you don't care, nobody else will. You know, you can have the best employees in the world. It doesn't matter. They're not going to necessarily treat it like an owner.
Absolutely.
That's what you have to realize. But anyways, this is your interview, not my interview.
Okay, fair enough. Next time.
So I'm sure you have a ton of stories from your many years now as an entrepreneur, but I would like to hear first a success story and then maybe a story that didn't go as planned.
Oh, I've got stories. But, all right, so success, those are the fun ones. Right after COVID, a now partner, and at the time we had just met each other, we went out and acquired a local trailer manufacturer, so cargo trailer. Think about lawn care companies that drive around town. They've got those cargo trailers that carry their equipment. And this business had been around forever in town. You see them driving, on all the roads. And, it was playbook. We were fortunate to win the opportunity. We acquired the business for a reasonable price. The sellers were reasonable people to work with. There was no stress, there was no hiccups, and we've been able to transition that business over 3 years. My partner, who owns the lion's share and runs the day-to-day, has been a great partner and friend, and the business has grown. So economically, it's been a fun outcome.
Yeah.
And to see, you read all this stuff about SMB buying, and it sounds so easy on the internet, and 9 times out of 10, it's not nearly as easy. Well, for this one, other than a few minor hiccups, it's been just smooth as can be.
That's your unicorn, really.
Yeah, just because remember, you don't need crazy outcomes for this game to be worthwhile.
Got it.
And this was perfect like that. And I would say, I've gotten into the fencing business, and that business has grown a lot, and it's partners with great people. And I think those are probably 2 of the big lessons. If you can get into a business that has good tailwinds, where small mistakes don't kill you, and you can do it with great people. If there's a key, that's probably it.
Okay. And now, what about the other side of that coin?
And the other side of that coin, I do have some tough stories. So, you're going to have some failures if you get on this road. Hopefully, those happen after a few wins, so you can make it in this game for a long time. What I would say is, there's been 2 that have been really rocky, and in both of them, the problem has been the same. It's been revenue. And it's been when you buy a small company, a lot of times the revenue generation is coming from who? The seller. And so, all the time you try to assess, how important is that seller to the customer base, the revenue, and sometimes you just miss on that. And maybe that seller was really good at sales. Maybe it was a technical estimating business, and that seller was more involved in technical estimating than you thought. But let's just say in those 2 businesses where it's been really rocky, that's been the common denominator.
Got it. Okay. And so how do you work out of a situation like that? I mean, I'm assuming you still own those businesses to this day, and you're still trying to steady that ship and get everything turned around?
Yeah, so like I said, I think I've been involved in running 3 businesses to this day, and 2 of those are when things go bad.
Okay.
So how's that for a real life? And that's why, too, when you get into owning an SMB, there are a lot of people on the internet that will say, not what you do, because you don't actually run the day-to-day, but a lot of folks don't want to be involved in the day-to-day. They want to be, on the business. They want the whole co. And if I had to give one piece of advice, which I probably shouldn't be doing, it is don't ever expect to be working on the business, especially the first one.
Yeah.
Cannonball all the way in. Take sales calls.
Right.
Be doing your own accounting. Do all the stuff that's going to teach you the hard lessons early on. Then you actually will be more prepared to step back.
Got it. Okay. So you really need to dive in. And I mean, I think it seems like common sense to a certain extent. You should understand how to run your business.
Right.
If you're going to own your business, you should understand how it actually operates, how you actually make a buck, what this guy does, how he gets paid. You should really understand a lot of the different roles in your business.
Because if you're going to hire for those roles, how are you going to know what they need?
Exactly. So that's a really good point there. So that's a natural transition into the SMB Boot Camp, because I'm assuming these are the types of things that people who want to acquire a business can learn from you guys in the boot camp. So tell me a little bit about that, kind of what the idea behind it is and what you guys are looking to accomplish with that.
Sure. I mean, the genesis was a few years after I bought those first few businesses, I'd get a lot of phone calls from friends who would say, I'm not sure what the heck you actually do, but you left a job to go buy a company and I want to do that. And I was spending a lot of time trying to guide them ad hoc. And so 4 years ago, I brought 8 people into my office and brought a few friends over that knew what they were talking about as far as how to buy an SMB, and we sort of created a mini course on how to do it. But it's been, I think, 10 cohorts now that we've taught.
Yeah.
I think we're almost to 200 alumni. So we have our playbook, and we teach that playbook in the form of an in-person 3-day boot camp on how to buy a small business, how to finance it, how to diligence, how to do everything you need to know how to do in order to get into the driver's seat.
Sure. And have you found that a lot of the people who went through the boot camp actually ended up buying businesses?
Yeah, and you know, I'm not going to bury the lead. Like, I do it in order to find investment opportunities.
Sure.
So I love to back these small business buyers, and that's how I put my retirement savings to work. And so yeah, it's been pretty fun to watch. You know, they'll sit at the table knowing nothing about how to actually buy a small company, and then, you know, it takes a full year. So people who do this shouldn't be, you know, expecting to get into the driver's seat quickly, but yeah, it's fun. A year later, they'll call me up. They'll say, I'm kind of ready to go. I think I've got something, and we'll try to get them to the finish line.
And so I think it sounds like this has obviously graduated now into SMB Bash, which is right around the corner. It's coming up. Do you want to talk about SMB Bash and what that's all about?
Yeah, so like, you know, not to try and oversell here, but the boot camp, 3-day course, very tactical, but at the same time, this community that we're in, whatever we want to call it, SMB, entrepreneurship through acquisition, it is a full-fledged community that's spreading like wildfire. And a few years ago, we created essentially a conference. It's another dirty word that I don't like to repeat, but it is a 3-day in-person conference where we bring doers, people doing deals and people operating companies to tell stories and tactics around lessons they've learned, how to actually do it, as opposed to reading it on Twitter where everybody's trying to sort of pump it up a little bit.
Right. No, absolutely. Follow me on Twitter, by the way, Sterling SBA.
He needs his 20th follower.
I just started my Twitter, and I was just talking to Sam. I'm like, man, how do I really break into Twitter? And he told me that I need to tweet more, which is pretty fair, I think. If you want to be popular on Twitter, you probably need to tweet more.
How many SBA loans did you do last year?
I did 47 million, which was a little over 30 units.
30 deals?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just every one of those deals has a nugget or two, a lesson.
Oh, for
and
sure.
probably it was painful, right?
Yeah.
Something happened, wish I would have known kind of thing.
Right.
Confidentially, throw that on Twitter.
Okay. Well, there you go. When you see me popping on Twitter in a couple of weeks, first of all, it's going to be because of this video that I dropped with the SMB guy himself. But secondly, it's the gems that he just dropped on me about how to build my Twitter following.
There we go. That's
tuned.
useful.
So I've been seeing this thing pop up on my Twitter feed about SMB and the NFL getting together, and it sounds like you're kind of leading that. So tell me a little bit about what that is. It's
really a way for me to take pictures with famous guys who are 3 times my size. So there is he'll be glad to hear this. There's an active NFL quarterback who I've become friends with and tried to mentor as he was planning his transition out of the NFL until he signed a contract and then another one and has extended his career in the league. And as he was planning his exit, he was going to venture into buying an SMB, which he has done, and he's continuing to look for SMBs to buy. Well, he's gotten me plugged into an organization that does a lot of the professional education for current athletes in the NFL. And so it's been fun. Traditionally, the education for those athletes has been around buying franchises or buying real estate or investing in private equity or hedge funds. Stuff that feels like capital allocation, right?
Right.
And for whatever reason, this ETA SMB world has has grown and ventured into these corners of the world that includes today the NFL athletes that are starting to get really intrigued by it, because maybe in many cases those players either have the wealth where they don't need to or they choose not to. They don't have to go buy and run a small company, but it's really intriguing for them to go invest in one.
Sure.
Or buy one and have a friend or family member run it for them.
Right.
It's a really interesting way to be an entrepreneur without having to create an idea from scratch.
So eventually what we need is for these NFL guys to come and do the SMB Boot Camp with you.
I've had a couple.
Oh, have you?
That's for the next video.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there, man. I appreciate you as always, man. Thanks for coming and
Likewise.
sitting down with me. I really do always appreciate your time, and you are a wealth of knowledge, especially in this SMB space. So I think there's a lot of people who are going to learn a lot from this video today.
Thanks, Sterling. It's fun to go way back.
Absolutely. You just watched an episode of Sterling SBA. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button.